Welcome to Hearts and Stripes, your one-stop shop for all things military marriage. I hope our discussions and interviews equip you with the tools to start or grow a beautiful marriage as we address the benefits and challenges of milmarriage. I believe life's most precious moments are worth celebrating, so I'll help you design your marriage blueprint in alignment with your core values. Thank you for joining us, and remember to rate, subscribe, and review. Let's do this. Okay, everyone, before we dive into this episode of Hearts and Stripes podcast, I had to let you know that the doors of the Command Collective community are soon to open. Mark your calendar for March 24th as we reopen the enrollment for this membership. You're not gonna wanna miss it because every military spouse and servicewoman out there needs a community that is supporting them as we thrive. And when we say thrive, we mean thriving personally in our mindset, thriving in our marriage, and thriving in building our legacies. Listen, this is not like any other group that you have been in, not with those seasoned or salty spouses, and definitely not like those Facebook groups. We are a group of ambitious women looking to level up throughout this military journey, and we know that we are better together. So come join the collective, mark your calendar. You can get on the wait list right now by heading to breecarroll.com/community. That's breecarroll.com/community. And we can't wait to welcome you in the Command Collective community. Now, this episode is a good one because I have the opportunity to talk to Christine Hinrichs. She is a long-time friend and a coach who is helping military spouses get unstuck and design that life of purpose that they are absolutely looking for. Listen, without further ado, I can't wait for you to hear our discussion with Christine Hinrichs. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hearts and Stripes podcast. This is your host, Bree Carroll, and I am thrilled to have this heart-to-heart with an old friend that I have the opportunity to connecting with. I think we originally connected before I was even a MilSpouse. So that is hilarious, but I won't give you any further ado. We're going to bring her on. Please, everyone, give a round of applause to our, or as I like to say, our master coach that is going to get you focused on your purpose, aligned with some tangible goals. She is also a fellow podcaster, and I don't hold it against her that she's an avid coffee drinker because y'all know that I love tea. But I am really excited to chat and for you to hear her heart as she shares a little bit about her military marriage story and about something that I think we both have in common. We're really ambitious military spouses, and we love to encourage and seeing other people thrive. So, Christine, go ahead and introduce yourself, say hey to everybody, and welcome to Hearts and Stripes podcast.
Well, hey, I am so excited to be here and to just have this conversation with Bree. It's been so long since we last chatted, and I'm really excited to reconnect.
I know it's going to be fun because like we have grown so much just like as individuals over the course of time. Del Rio, Texas,
a lot of life has happened.
A lot of life has happened. Del Rio, Texas seems like many, many moons ago. And if I can just brag on you for a little bit, I loved that she was the MilSpouse who came into town and took over a bakery, like a brick and mortar, had a coffee shop, did all the things. And I think that really lends itself to that marketing strategist component that you now lean in more into now, but just seeing someone again, before I was like officially a military spouse, but like it truly shaped what I saw like as what a MilSpouse can do. Right. So I love that. And I would love for you to one, share your military marriage story, and then also share more about that journey and like what it looks like now for you on a day-to-day.
Yeah, so a lot has happened. So when I first met my now husband, I had no interest in doing anything related to the military. I grew up in a family where I had two grandfathers who were in the Air Force. I had uncles. So I grew up, my parents weren't in the military, but I heard all of these stories about change and having to move all the time, and the one thing I took away from that was that is not the life for me. Like, and I had very few criteria about my future spouse, except for I didn't want them to be in the military. So God sometimes laughs at our plans. So I met my husband, and my first thought was, but you are in the military, so this is not going to be a thing. It took about 6 months. He finally convinced me to go on a date with him.
Aw,
And long
yay!
story short, here we are almost 14 years later. And so it's been a journey. It's been definitely a ride, because I had two things that I was really concerned about. And one was my biggest fears were getting stationed in the middle of nowhere, because I'm a city girl. And my second fear was not being able to maintain my career, because, my background is in communications and marketing, and I had all of these grand ideas of how I was going to climb and build my career and have a say in where I lived and what I did. And military kind of put a wrinkle in all of that. But once I decided, you know what, we are meant to be together, and it's worth it to embrace this lifestyle, to be with a person that I love. And so that kind of started this whole journey, which has had so many ebbs and flows over the last several years. So when we got married, I was already living in the place where we were at. So I already had my job, my friend group, and just everything was already there. And so the first assignment that we got together was to Del Rio, Texas,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
a small town in the middle of nowhere, my biggest fear right there. And then I said, okay, let's do this. I'm going to embrace this. We moved there, and that's when I realized, oh, if I'm not bilingual, I can't get a job here. And that was a big adjustment for me, because I was very driven, very career oriented at the time. And I really spent several months just moping, like, what has happened to my life? And then I got to this place where it's like, okay, this is going to be what I make of it. And, crazy set of circumstance happens. I end up opening a coffee shop because, well, I bought the bakery and turned it into a coffee shop because there's no coffee shop in town. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something with what I've been given, with where I'm at. I'm going to make the most of this and see what happens. And so did that for a couple of years, and then it was time to move again. And I learned a lot of great lessons in the process. And I was like, okay, definitely don't want to have a brick and mortar business when we are moving every 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
But then after that, I started having babies, and that's really when I lost sight of myself. And I was like, who am I anymore outside of being a military spouse, outside of being a mom? In the course of about 4 years, we moved 4 times, and I had 3 babies, and I just felt lost in the chaos of military life. And I realized I wasn't thriving, and this life wasn't working for me, and something needed to change. So I do what I love to do, which is just dive in and research everything and figure out what's not working, what needs to change, how can I embrace the life that I'm living, and use my skills and my passions to make a difference and to do something that gives me that sense of purpose. And so that has been this evolution over the last several years. And when I had a newborn, a 1-year-old, and almost 4-year-old, I launched my first blog. And I didn't know what that was supposed to be, except that I knew that that was my next step. And I just started blogging about my life as a military spouse and the things that I was learning. And again, as we take these steps, we kind of see what's the next step in front of us. And so that led me to realizing, hey, I have a passion for helping other military spouses. And what is that going to look like? What is that next step, that next iteration? And so almost a year ago, I launched my podcast, the MilSpouse Mastermind Show, which is all about how we get unstuck and learn to thrive and live with purpose as military spouses. So long story short, that's kind of been my adventure over the last 13, 14 years.
I absolutely love that. And you said so much that I do want to foot stomp and bring people's attention to. I love that you called it a journey, right? It starts with this understanding perspective of what military life could be, but then your heart is turned and you have this moment of commitment where you really did lean in. And I love the word that you used, which was, it's worth it. Like, it's worth it to kind of go on the journey. And I love how you kind of lean into that, like, hey, I'm going to figure it out. And as life would have it, you are immediately faced with your fears. And you really did do a great job of like going head on with it, not shying away. You had your moment, right? You moped for a little bit, but you leaned right in. And I think right in that first piece, that is a lot of lesson where we can kind of take from not judging a situation before actually leaning in, but also assessing the cost and weighing if it is worth it, if it really will enhance your life. And in this case, it was love. So we are definitely for that and are excited about how you committed to that relationship, even if it meant having to be creative, right, about that journey and that process. And then the other thing that I really wanted to foot stomp, which I think is a great takeaway from your story, is just even having that spirit of like, you wanted to do purposeful work and be career driven. Your hat and your role kind of changed. And now you're a mom and you needed that time to really figure out again what that looked like for you, what that looked like for your family, but still knowing that you are super talented and capable of doing so many things. And then just betting on yourself, which is always my favorite thing for military spouses specifically, is to be entrepreneurial. And for you, being entrepreneurial again, in a new way with the blog, with the podcast, and serving the community that you knew oh so well, right? I think that was huge. And I think that's really worth just noting for any of our listeners who are just kind of like, I am in that stuck in between. I am a new mom, because I could totally relate to that. Like, once you start having kids, you're like, I don't know who I am. I don't know if my name is still Bree. I look like a different person. I don't feel like the same me. And now there are these people depending on me to keep them alive. I was just trying to keep myself alive. And it becomes a whole, what I like to call here, like an identity crisis. We go through these spirals as military spouses due to the stresses and the pressures that are normal, air quotes, for us. And it's something that we have to experience time and time again, which is why I love that we have the opportunity to reconnect, especially because you can be such a resource to others who are going through similar experiences and sharing some of the tools that you have in your toolbox. So if you're not already subscribed to her podcast, please go ahead. We're going to drop that link in the show notes to make it super simple, because, you know, we love supporting podcasts and fellow podcasters, especially if it's going to get us to reaching our 3 principles here, which is thriving personally, thriving in our marriage, and thriving in building a legacy. So I would love for you to share, even in the lesson that you just broke down for us, what was like a big aha for you to like lean into this new chapter? Like, what advice would you give someone even who maybe feels like, I don't know what my next step is? Because I love how you said, like, I just knew my first step is this blog. And then as I took that step, I figured out my next one. So what advice would you give to someone who is like, okay, I don't even know what the first step is. Help me figure that part out.
Yes. So this is the big aha moment for me, because I feel like when you are in a situation you don't have kids yet, you can be taken completely out of your comfort zone in a place where there aren't all of the resources and opportunities that you're used to, but you still have that time freedom to volunteer or to find something to really fill your cup, right? And when you have babies that come along and you are needed 24/7, your time freedom, that flexibility kind of goes away for a season. And it was really in that season that I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I don't have the time. My spouse was deploying a lot at the time. And so, I'm home with babies by myself, trying to do all the things. And for a while, I tried every kind of job option you can think of. I tried working outside the home full time. I tried working part time. I tried being an independent contractor. And I was like, okay, what's the right work life balance for me and for our family? Because I don't want to sacrifice the needs of our family, the needs of our kids. I want to make sure that I'm there for our family, but I also need this thing for me. And so I was researching, trying to figure out, reading all of the things out there about goal setting and habits and, purpose and starting a business. I'm like, what am I missing? And really, the big aha moment for me was when I stopped asking the question, what should I be doing? Because our whole life, our identity is so built as a culture on what we do. And when you go and you introduce yourself and you say, who are you? What do you do? And so we get this idea of it's all about what we do. And if we're not doing something that lights us up, if we don't have a job, or we find our whole identity in life as a spouse and as a parent, we lose sight of who we are. And so I kept asking this question, what am I supposed to be doing? And the aha moment was when I changed the question and I started asking, who do I want to be? So I took the emphasis off on what I'm doing and how I'm making money or volunteering or who I'm in relationship with. And I just said, who do I want to be as a person? And what kind of legacy do I want to leave? What are the characteristics that I want to be true? What do I want people to say about me? And I started thinking about me showing up as the best version of myself and living into that story. And once I took that focus off of doing and put it on being, that set the foundation for everything. And figuring out, what is it, who do I want to be, and what does that look like for my life, and what's the next step that I'm supposed to go on this journey. So that would be the best first place to start, is stop focusing on what you're doing and start asking the question, who do I want to be as a person?
Oh, I love that. I love that this journey has brought you to these big ahas, because like, listeners, y'all know she's just singing my heart song right now. It's really a profound shift in your mindset when you stop and go from doing to being, and asking and changing the question. Another coach that I love, she always says we need to ask better questions. And I would definitely put this one in that category of a higher level of question to ask ourselves, because you're right, you get very different outcomes as opposed to it being task or role oriented when you start talking about, and you said the L word, which also lit me up, which is legacy. We start thinking about, what do we want people to say about us when we're not here anymore, and what impact that we made. It really does shift the conversation. And I think that's really encouraging, especially for the women in our community, simply because we do get wrapped up in being mom, spouse, at whatever, insert whatever title, entrepreneur, coach, speaker, author. We get wrapped up in all of those things, but none of that matters, right? If we're not showing up as the person that we want to be, or if we are pretending to be someone else to fill the role that we feel like we should be doing, in air quotes, right? We feel like this is who people want us to show up as, but we're not being authentic to the person and true to ourselves. And that really does further cause us to spiral. So I think you really hit the nail on the head there when it comes to that best first step. So I'm really grateful that you shared that. And I also would love to do, as a follow-up question, kind of ask, well, now that I know the better question, right? So what resource or what can I maybe lean into to kind of help me break down who do I want to be? Because the reality of this community is we get caught up in being missionally focused, or what does the, for us, Air Force need from my family, or the sacrifice. We oftentimes don't take the time to do that introspection. And you may not know, like, who do I want to be? Like, that's a very freeing question, but it also can be one that causes you to like get into that realization where I've never thought of myself. Like, I've never prioritized anything like this before. So what type of any tool or recommendation would you have for someone who's like really thinking about themselves in this way for the first time?
So I'm going to offer 3 things that I would totally recommend to you. And the first one is just, if you want to have these conversations on a weekly basis, to head over to the MilSpouse Mastermind Show. That's my weekly podcast where we talk about these topics and what it looks like to live this out. So that's the best place to begin. I also have a free download available. It's my Get Unstuck guide. And it's based on this concept that I created called the growth wheel, which divides our life up into 10 areas based on this question, who do I want to be? And looking at our life in the lens of each of those areas to say, hey, where am I really doing awesome? And which areas am I really struggling in right now? And it's called the growth wheel because it's designed to work in a clockwise direction. Because one of the big pieces in my own life, my journey that I figured out, was if I am not having healthy inputs into my life, I will not have healthy outputs. I will not show up as the person that I want to be, as the mom that I want to be, as the military spouse that I want to be. And so I need to make sure that I am having healthy inputs so that I can have healthy outputs. So you get the Get Unstuck guide. It will talk you through what the growth wheel is, how to assess each of those 10 areas of your life, and how you can take one next step. So that's another great way to get started on that journey. And you can get that by going to milspousemastermind.com/growth wheel. So that is free, that is available to you. And then if you really want to dive deep into this, I have a course called the MilSpouse Purpose Playbook, and it takes you in depth into asking all of these questions to get clear on your identity, what it means to live a life of purpose, how you find your sweet spot, you create your own personal purpose statement, and then you talk about how you live that out, how you set goals based on who you want to be, and how you make it fit into your life as a military spouse. Because there's so much that happens into our lives, and it can be easy to put ourselves on the back burner. And it's really about how we incorporate these concepts into our daily, weekly, and monthly rhythm. So those are the 3 pieces, the 3 recommendations that I would give for getting started on this journey.
I love that. And I will say all of those links are below in the show notes. So it's super easy for you to connect, one, with the podcast, get access to that download, and definitely let me be the one to encourage you to take the deep dive and look at that course. I think we don't invest in ourselves. And especially if you're getting stuck in this place where it's like, okay, I understand that I have to figure out who I want to be. Having a guide to help you move through that journey is huge value. And I would definitely encourage you to encourage you to invest in yourself, with the MilSpouse Purpose Playbook. I absolutely love that. And I'm super excited because, I love a good resource. So before I let you go, I have to ask, One, where can people connect with you? I know they're definitely subscribing, rating, and reviewing your podcast right now, but how can they also just connect with you? Where's your favorite place to play? And then we'll get into my favorite question, which is our heart track.
All right. So if you want to connect with me, obviously go to your favorite podcast player, download and subscribe to the MilSpouse Mastermind Show. We also have a free community on Facebook that you can go to. The easiest way to get there is just going to milspousemastermind.com/community. And we just have conversations in there about how to thrive, to talk about where we're struggling, and to just encourage one another. So that's a great place to go. You can also find me on Instagram under MilSpouse Mastermind, and I would love to connect with you and just hear more about other military spouses' journey and how we can encourage and support one another.
Well, thank you so much for all of that. I think there's a lot of gems in this one. Especially leaning into just that step by step and more so focused on taking that first step. I think that is the scary place that a lot of us as military spouses stop, is we get in that spiral and then we are afraid to take the next step. And if I'm being completely honest and transparent, sometimes the spiral is more comfortable because it's what we know. It's the chaos of military life. But let me just lean in and just challenge you and say, you know what? What if you could live a life that you are thriving in, that you are excited to show up for, that you feel supported as you go through this journey, and you can really lean into your purpose. And as I like to say, your present purpose, wherever you find yourself today, leaning in and knowing that you can show up being the person that you want to be. I think these are amazing first steps, and really a supportive steps, which is even better, right? So that you can become that person, that ideal person, and thrive. I love that you said that as well. We're all about that here at Hearts and Stripes podcast. But now, one of my favorite questions to ask our guests has to do with our heart tracks. And for those of you that know us, you know we have a full playlist on Spotify, Heart Tracks 3. You can find little reminders of the conversation, the discussion that we have right here on Hearts and Stripes podcast to listen while you're driving, while you're cleaning up, or on the go. These are little reminders for you to apply the things that you've learned right here on Hearts and Stripes podcast. So head to Spotify, check out Heart Tracks 3, and you can also get a link to all of the resources shared here and the full playlist. So my guest is in the hot seat, and I can't wait to hear what our heart track is for today. So get us out of suspense. What is the heart track for this episode?
So the funny part about this is that it is my wedding song. It is also, we have a plaque above our bed that says this, and it is something that I talk about in our community a lot. And that is Better Together, which is the name of Jack Johnson's song. We played it at our wedding. That was our wedding dance. But it really talks about this idea of we are better together. And that applies to me and my husband in our marriage, and knowing that we are stronger because we are together. It also applies to our community of military spouses, because it's so easy to let ourselves feel like we're alone in this, but whatever we've gone through, there is somebody else that has also experienced it. And as you said, it's hard to lean into the discomfort of growth and change. It's so much easier to stay where we're comfortable, even if we don't like where we're at. And what really makes us stronger is when we're together, when we're not trying to figure this out on our own, when we're doing it in a community, a supportive community. So that is why I say better together.
Oh, I love it. And I love how you tied it all in. That is going to be a beautiful reminder, not just to continue to have a strong military marriage, which we are all about, but also as a little extra nudge of encouragement that you don't have to do this life alone, or be on this military journey by yourself. So better together is our heart track for this episode. It has truly been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time as you're momming, as you're doing all the entrepreneurial things. And I'm really just excited that we have the opportunity to connect again. And guys, for all of those who are in the Command Collective community, we may be able to persuade her to come in and be our master mentor and share some of these tools for our mindset month and really get us on track with these tools. So thank you again for being on. I'm just super excited to continue to stay in touch, right? Because like you said, we are better together.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun to do.
Thank you for tuning in. Remember to rate, subscribe, and review. This is Hearts and Stripes. We are the few, the proud, that aim high and are forged by love. Always ready, always there. We are MilMarriage Strong.